In the name of Almighty, the most gracious and the most merciful. My dear students, today we are on the part 2 of research methodology and introduction. Today we will be discussing the chapter 1, research methodology and introduction from C.R. Kothari textbook. We have already covered meaning of research, objective, motivation and types of research. Today we will be covering research approaches, research and scientific method, significance of research, method and methodology, and importance of knowing how research is done. Starting with research approaches. What is approaches? Like if I ask you like what is like an approach, because there are times we may confuse approach with methods. Fine. These are two different things. Just to explain what is an approach, let me give an example. I give you a piece of cake, or a big piece of cake, and I'll ask you to distribute that cake among a class of students. There are like around 50 students in the class. How will you distribute it? Maybe one of you will go and take count of how many people are there, and then there are 50, so you will cut the cake into 50 different pieces, and then you will distribute it to them. Equal parts you will distribute, equal size of pieces you will cut in that small piece of cake, and then 50 pieces you will make out of it, and then you will distribute it. Maybe another student will go and very well that person knows that the cake is it will be if we distribute it equally, it will be very too small in quantity. So that student might do something different, like they may ask how many of you need this cake. Maybe among the 50, 30 of them say that I need the cake. Fine. Then they may distribute it. Fine. Only to 30 students. And the third guy may go to the class with the piece of cake, and then take a different approach in distributing the cake. Maybe they will ask that this is a piece of cake, and how many of you are hungry? That may be the question that third student might ask. Fine. Then maybe there will be around 10 or 20 people say that I am hungry, I am feeling very hungry, I want something to eat. That guy might distribute it in making it 20 pieces out of that big piece of cake, and then distribute to 20. Fine. And in number of approaches for distributing this one piece of cake among the class of 50 students can be drawn. Right. So these are all we call as different approaches to one particular problem. How to solve a problem, we can take out a number of approaches to solve that particular problem. So here in terms of research also, to answer our research question, to address the research problem, we can take a number of approaches. Fine. And basically these approaches can be divided into two categories: quantitative approach and qualitative approach. Here quantitative approach is like wherein the first students, you can remember the first students, what that first student did, just simply counted the number of students in the class and cut the piece of cake into 50. Right. That is a kind of a quantitative approach, just looking at the quantity, not looking at any qualitative features like hunger of the student or any other particular quality. That student was focusing on the quantity, number of students. Fine. That type of approach when we take in solving the research problem, that is called as quantitative approach. You must know the difference between the research methods and an approach. Methods is just simple, how we do things. That is like the method. And in next topic we will also discuss the difference between method and methodology. Approach is more of a methodological thing, wherein you have to talk about the overall way you are going to do it. It's not about the parts, it's about the whole research itself. So in quantitative we have got something called inferential. Inferential is like, for example, survey method is an inferential study. Like we collect the data and we try to infer some meaning out of the data. That is inferential quantitative approach. Fine. Wherein you just simply collect the data, like you go collect the data. Yesterday last session also we were discussing about survey method. So in survey method what we do, we simply go collect the data and explain the data. That is inferential quantitative method. Next is experimental method is also there in quantitative approach. Like wherein experimental approach is like you are not simply trying to infer meaning out of the data, instead you are going to see how you can manipulate the data, the numerical values, how you can manipulate it, change it, bring in some changes, and bring positive results. Fine, you are trying to change something and see its effect on some other variable. That type of approach when we take in solving our problem, that is called as experimental approach. And third one in quantitative approach is simulation, wherein it is neither an experimental nor an inferential, but wherein we will create an environment or a simulation and naturally collect the data. We are not modifying or molding it completely, but we will create a setting wherein we are able to observe the behavior or attitude, whatever it is we are trying to study about, and we will measure it quantitatively. That is simulation quantitative approach. Next one, like qualitative is like kind of subjective assessment of behavior, attitude, or whatever we are studying, the qualities we are studying. Like you remember the last students who went to distribute the cake, what that student did? That student simply asked, how many of you are hungry? That's a kind of a response which you cannot measure quantitatively. On the basis of their response, on the basis of the judgment of the experimenter or the researcher, the decision is taken whom to give the cake. Fine. So these kind of approaches, like for example, focus group discussions, projective techniques, in-depth interviews, these methods are used in qualitative approach. Fine. Hope you are clear about quantitative and qualitative approaches. Here we are not discussing about methods. Next, we'll talk about significance of research. Why? I mean, do we really need research? If you see any post-graduation course will have a paper called research methodology. Go to any field, any subfields, everywhere you will find in post-graduation level we teach research. Why? Is it very important? No. Let's hear it from the words of Hudson Maxim. He says that all progress is born of inquiry. Doubt is often better than overconfidence. For it leads to inquiry, and inquiry leads to invention. Always, progress can never happen without a particular amount of research being involved in it. Like every field has progressed so far into, whatever we have reached so far is due to research. That is a basis for change. That is a basis for progress always. Even all government policies, whatever programs we are implementing, everything is based upon certain amount of research. And also whatever problems our human being came across, that is solved through research. You must have seen in this scenario, COVID scenario, there were many research funding agencies who were funding specially for COVID related researches. Like they were ready to fund any amount of money for solving this issue, pandemic. Fine. So every problem we find solution only through research, and I'm not going deeper into this because I know I have spoken many times regarding the significance of research in terms of psychology. Next, let's just have a quick look on the method and methodology. Most of us get confused between these two things, method and methodology. Let me just simplify it and in simple words explain. Method is here we are talking about some techniques that are used for conducting research. It is like small parts in the research. It's not the whole thing. Like collection of data, we have some methods, right? Like how you go and collect the data. Like for example, you may just go and take names and that come back, or you may take the directory and choose some people from that, and you may choose to have some interview as a method. Like these are all method. Interview, data collection method we call, sampling call, these are all small units in research. The statistical techniques we use, that is kind of a method. Fine. These statistical techniques are used. These are the method used in identifying the solution for the problem. Evaluating results. What are the methods used for evaluating research? These are the components wherein we use methods. Whereas methodology is, it's larger than method. It is a way to systematically solve the research problem. Like for example, the cake example which we were discussing. In that, method is, how choose the people. What method you use to choose the person or students for whom you were distributing the cake. That can be a method. Methodology is the entire thing you had. First I thought about it and came across these solutions, and I choose this solution, and then I went to the class and I stood in front of the class. I commonly asked everybody this question. This is like the entire process. When you explain, that becomes the methodology, how you systematically solve the research problem. Like methodology is, it has many dimensions and includes methods too. Like methods is a small component which comes under a methodology, and logic behind each method is explained in methodology. Fine. The data collection technique, I use this particular data collection technique, you will explain in the method. But in methodology, you need to explain why did you choose that method. There are many methods available, but why did I choose this particular method for solving my research problem? That you will mention in the methodology. This is the basic difference between method and methodology. In your textbook, you have got a table content wherein different methods and the systematically how this method is used, everything is explained. You can just refer to it. Next is research method and scientific method. In the very beginning, when we were discussing about the definition of research, we were also discussing how the definition of research differs from a layman definition to academic definition. Like whereas when research comes to our academic field, it takes another dimension of a scientific method. What is scientific method? Now, what is science? We have been studying science since our school days, right? So if I ask you, what is science, what will you say? Is it just a subject? No, it is when you think deeper about what is science. Science is a method of finding solution to problems or studying something. So that method is not just simply coming up with your own objective explanations to something. No. Or just coming up with your own subjective explanation to something. No, that is not a scientific method. Scientific method always relies upon empirical evidences. There should be empirical evidences, then it becomes a scientific method. It utilizes relevant concepts. Now what are the concepts available? Just logically note down the concepts and try to infer meaning out of it, connect it. So it always utilizes relevant concepts and it objectively try to explain stuff. It's not just subjective explanations. It objectively tries to explain or find solutions. And there is some ethics behind the science. Whatever method we use, we follow certain ethics in it. And probabilistic predictions are there. It's not just mere predictions, but it is based on probability. Testing and replication is there in science. Like you have done an experiment, you have done a research, there is always scope for repetition and also testing whether the findings are right or wrong. And anybody else can repeat it and find or come up with the similar kind of solutions. And scientific method always based or on formulating theories, not just mere conclusions about things. It's always based on or focused upon formulating theories. So that is where the work which we are going to do differ from our day-to-day life research. Like in day-to-day life also we are doing research, right? Like coming up with solution for every problem we face. For example, you visiting college, coming to college, there may be 3 or 4 different ways to college, but you will choose which way to go on the basis of your own research, like the time taken, the easy transportation, and there are many other factors you will consider in order to arrive at this conclusion which way you should choose for traveling to college. It's a simple research you have done, but whether we can call it as a scientific research, that if it is based upon all these criteria, then we can call it as a scientific method. Next, importance of knowing how research is done. Why should we know how to do research? Like, it helps anybody, the researcher, to develop a disciplined thinking and bend of mind to observe the field objectively. Like, there is a chance of misunderstanding and misinterpretation, or getting misguided towards stuff. We always discuss about using non-scientific methods for when we deal with cases in clinical psychology, right? The non-evidential methods. Evidence-based therapies are given more preference than other type of methods or techniques, whatsoever is used in treating clients when it comes to clinical field. A bend of mind is created when we know how to do research. That is the difference between the person who knows how to do research and the person who doesn't know how to do research. The disciplined thinking is present in one and absent in the other. And we are able to evaluate and use research result with confidence. We'll be able to use. Fine. That is very important when it comes to any field or subfields of psychology. And we are able to make intelligent decisions concerning problems facing practical problems in life. Like, whatever we are coming up with, like whatever subfield we are working in, we'll of course come up with or come across many problems. When we come across these problems, whether we are able to make an intelligent decision or not, that depends upon how better that person. For example, engineering students are known as better problem solvers. They are always considered as whenever there is a problem, they will come up with a unique solution. We have seen inventions are done by engineers in whatever field it is, they'll come up with some different kind of solution. What happens is their mind is trained in that manner, in a kind of a mechanical manner, wherein they are able to come up with some solutions. That is possible through learning how to do research. You are able to solve problems. And the last point is like ability to judge the adequacy of methods. The last point is ability to judge the adequacy of methods. When you hear something new, when we come across some new research or methods, whether you are able to find that method or the research is good or bad, whether we can follow it. Like, especially in our country, we have got many researches or many paper publications and many things which are based not upon very very good methods, and we cannot rely on those results. We cannot rely on all the research results. So to choose which research result you have to rely upon, you must know, you must be able to judge what is the best research, what is the right research, and what is the which research has some issues. That can be developed through learning how to do a research. These are few points for importance of knowing how research is done. Thank you so much. In next class, we'll be discussing about the research process. I hope you will go and read the textbook, and we will come up with questions, and also you will ask me about all your doubts. Thank you so much.